Chest up, shoulders back. This is Revival Fitness, your home for gains and brains. And I have been on quite the fat loss journey myself over the past number of months, and I am going to share some lifestyle hacks that I have discovered along the way. And before we get into that, it's not only the fat loss that is part of this equation, as I've talked about many times before. You need to build your baseline muscle mass to look good once you get lean, and if you are struggling to do so, look no further than my programs down below. I lay out everything you need to make serious gains in less time than you thought you needed. Stop wasting time, stop guessing, get it all taken care of now. So the old adage that you cannot outrun a bad diet, that is very true. Now that said, cardio is going to be of assistance when it comes to losing a considerable amount of fat, and that leads us into the first tip here. Combining your cardio with work in some capacity is going to make this as seamless as possible. And keep in mind that cardio is a very vague term. A lot of people have a mental concept of cardio being running or some type of more intense exercise. So in terms of just getting more cardio, as a lot of people talk about, getting more steps in totally qualifies. That said, most of us today spend a lot of time sitting on our asses. You do this in the car, at the desk, in the car again, back home on the couch. A lot of people are very sedentary during the day, and this is not going to be applicable to every single person, which I understand. But if you can manage to get more cardio in while you're doing a task, I think it's going to dramatically increase the adherence, and you're not going to think about it as much. Because let's be real, what is the worst part about cardio, even very low intensity cardio, which I would recommend, especially if muscle building and strength gain are your main goal? It's just boring. It is painfully obnoxious, every minute goes by so slowly. So whenever your mind is really on cardio, the fact that you're doing it, it makes it that much worse. Combine that with the fact that the way a lot of people do cardio, they're at the gym just on the treadmill or on the Stairmaster or something, you're not really getting anything else done. So you're being hit with a double whammy. It's drawn out and boring, and you can't really be productive. The good news is that as working from home becomes more and more common these days, the more control that you can have over these things. So whether you're in an office or at home, if you have a typical desk job, I would say getting a standing desk is a smart investment. If for no other reason than improving your overall posture, this is going to allow you to expend more energy without even trying, because standing compared to sitting is going to do that by itself. I've been using a standing desk for a couple of years now. I do not plan on ever going back. I will link the one I use and other equipment mentioned in this video in the pinned comment as well if you guys want to check these out. And I've told you guys many times before, the whole concept of calories burned and tracking calories in general, not only is it faulty in the sense that calories don't really even describe how we metabolize and use food, they're also not possible to totally track, even with the most precise scientific instruments possible, which we don't have access to as normal people. You cannot get these things down to a T. So let's take a look at this chart. We're going to start with the average American woman. This details a typical 8-hour workday. It says this woman in the example is 20 years old and she is 5'4" tall. Calories burned after 8 hours of sitting is estimated to be 514. Now, let's take a look at the amount burned after 4 hours of sitting and 4 hours of standing. So she basically is alternating throughout the day. That is up to 784. So the difference burned over 8 total hours is going to come out to 270, and that is a difference of 33 3/4 over the course of a single hour. Now we'll look at the same chart for a 20-year-old man who is 5'9", let's just say 180 pounds. The amount burned after 8 hours of sitting, estimated to be 674. 4 hours sitting and 4 hours standing, it goes up to 1,027. That is a difference of 353 over the course of the day, or just over 44 per hour. And keep in mind with those charts, they are assuming that you are sitting half the day and standing half the day. Very rarely do I sit during the day. Sometimes whenever I'm eating, maybe I'll take a seat on my kitchen table, on my couch, something like that. But it's usually not too long. If you're going to be able to stand for even longer, this is only going to go up and up and up over the course of the day, and that's going to expand over the course of days and weeks and months. You see how this can add up. I will note though, if you are doing a serious cut, I experienced this a lot recently, you're going to find that you randomly start sitting more. Even if you don't consciously want to sit, you'll just find yourself sitting even more on the toilet, on the couch, looking at your phone like, oh, how did I end up here? Your body is going to find ways to get you to expend less energy overall when you're on a cut. So that's another reason why you cannot outrun a bad diet. Your body's going to make you more tired, more fatigued. So keep in mind, as helpful as cardio can be, it is a supplement to fat loss. It is never going to be the main driver. Or I guess if it is the main driver of your fat loss, you're going to fall out of that pretty quickly and then probably regain all the weight. So that is the first level of this, but then we can take it even further. I put a treadmill under my desk a couple of months ago. You can also do this even if you sit during the day. You can get a little peddler or recumbent bike. You know, there's a lot of options you can choose from, a little stepper. So what I've been doing every single day on this cut, I wake up, I jump on this treadmill, I put it on the 3 setting. I don't do remarkably fast. It's enough to where I'm able to break a bit of a sweat, but it's nothing intense. I can still focus on my work seamlessly. I blink my eye, and I've already spent an hour on the treadmill. The other day, I got so caught up in my work, and I just forgot I was walking on the treadmill. I did 8 miles.
This guy's a gangster? His real name's Clarence.
For me, the treadmill has been a game changer in terms of cardio, because before I bought this thing, I would do the typical stuff at the gym. And you can listen to podcasts and watch videos and read books and all this other stuff, but the time in comparison of doing those and actually working, like your mind is totally taken off of the task of the cardio itself, I think it's really no comparison. But let's assume that you are not able to work directly from home. How could you apply this in other jobs? A lot of you guys watching this channel are young dudes, high school, college age. You have a lot of freedom when it comes to this because you're going to be doing entry-level jobs anyway. You don't really even need any experience. So you have more freedom than you may realize in terms of the work that you pick, even if it's only seasonal or part-time. But these can include positions like manual labor, working at a restaurant or bar, as I spent a lot of years doing, personal training, you can do landscaping. These are just some of the jobs that you're going to be able to earn money while being on your feet for most, if not all, of your shift. Those of you guys on college campuses too, you have a lot of space to walk around in. Don't just sit and rot in your dorm room all day. Get outside, go walk around, look at the girls, get anxious, don't say anything, but, you know, at least go outside. And just generally, if possible, I would walk places rather than driving. For myself, if a place is usually within a mile to a mile and a half, I don't know what that is in kilometers, commie math, but if it's not raining outside, I like to walk as much as possible. Now, if you're going to the grocery store and you have to carry a ton of bags, that might not be totally feasible. I have done the strongman carry for a long way. Not exactly fun, but if you're young and broke, you gotta do what you gotta do. But there are more ways to get in more steps, if not just standing more during the day. And if you can implement some of these strategies, I think they're going to help you lose more fat. Now, tip number 2 here comes down to meal timing. And there are essentially 2 main ways that you can spin this. The first one is going to be limiting meals to confined times each day. You may know this by the acronym TRE, or time restricted eating. Probably the most common way this is done is via intermittent fasting. So you'll commonly see things like 16-8. So 16 hours of the day, you're not eating anything, you have an 8-hour window. Some people may even do OMAD or 2MAD. Some people also will not eat until a certain time of day. Those of you guys who've been doing Ramadan, you're kind of doing this by default right now. But they might not eat anything until, say, noon. Some people even take this so far as to train fasted, and they don't eat anything during the day until after they work out. Some people set a cap on their meal timing. They don't eat anything past 8 or 9 p.m., especially those of you that like to snack. You get cravings maybe later in the day. But the big point there is that it's something you need to adhere to. So if you're unable to adhere to time-restricted eating, I think a better option is going to be eating your meals spaced throughout the day. This is the standard fitness industry procedure. We are told to eat every so often to keep our metabolism running.
That's what this is, you know. Satanic black magic.
Even though that is faulty, your metabolism's going to run just fine without eating that often. It's not like those are exclusive things. That said, For the purposes of controlling your overall intake, a lot of people do better knowing that they're going to be able to have something to eat numerous times a day, as opposed to shutting themselves off from eating for extended periods. And even if you are craving something sweet or fried, typical junk food, candy bars, high sugar, things like that, I'd say eating a healthier meal is going to curb that craving more so than eating nothing. So let's say, for example, it is 10 p.m., you're going to go to bed in a couple hours, and you get that craving. Are you more realistically going to be able to handle this if you eat nothing at all and just, I don't know, try to make yourself not focus on it and then go to bed? Or if you have one extra meal left during the day, even if it's a smaller meal, I would think that having the smaller meal is going to help in that case, but this ultimately comes down to the individual. When it comes down to diet and meal timing and things like that, it takes a good amount of experimenting to see what works best for you and what you can best adhere to. But a big bonus tip here that I find works well for myself, I try to eat at least half, if not most, of my total food for the day after my workout. So in my experience, the vast majority of people are going to be hungrier after they train as opposed to before, especially if you had a very intense workout and if you're doing some cardio on top of that. Something I notice about myself, and I've seen a lot of other people report this too, even if you wake up and your stomach is grumbling like you're hungry, if you just start your day as normal, take a shower, brush your teeth, get to work, all that other stuff, that hunger tends to subside, or at least you don't really focus on it as much, as opposed to once you finish a workout, those hunger signals tend to be much harder to ignore. So let's say you're like a lot of people, you do a typical 9-to-5 job, or you go to school, you get to the gym around that same dreaded time, the 4 to 6 p.m. window whenever it gets the most busy. All you really need to eat prior to the gym, maybe have something small for breakfast, you could have a pre-workout meal or snack, something pretty small, maybe a small lunch, and some people may be opposed to that because they think you shouldn't eat that much close to bed. I can see that rationale, namely if you're having a lot of carbs right before bed, spiking your blood sugar and insulin, then going to sleep. But I would say that you want to have a good bulk of your food after the workout in general, just so you can satiate those cravings and you're not going to bed with a grumbling stomach. I've told you guys before, the best time to have your carbs during the day, if you're consuming them, is going to be pre and post workout. I would say getting them in pre-workout is more important, so I would try to shift the carbs to that window. You can have a little bit after the workout, and then closer to bed, I would say keep it more to protein and fat. That's going to be the best way, at least on paper, to maximize body composition. How huge of a difference is that going to make on fat loss if you have a lot of carbs before bed? I'm not entirely sure, but that's just a rule that I like to follow. It seems to be working well for me, so I'm going to stick with it. And even if you train very late in the day sometimes, whether it is intentional or not, you get to the gym at 9-10 p.m., I would still say you want to have at least one good meal after your workout and before you go to bed. And speaking of meals, especially when it comes to finishing them, the next tip is something that sounds inconsequential, but I've noticed for myself it can make a major difference, especially toward the end of the day. And that is brushing your teeth and chewing gum. And I know this might sound weird, but hear me out. This kind of comes down to sensations in the mouth, which that doesn't sound great in terms of what YouTube's going to think about it, but here's what I mean. Whenever you eat something, you obviously are going to have that taste in your mouth. Whenever you brush your teeth or chew gum, you are also going to have these sensations, typically going to be like that fresh mint flavor. Both of those things are ultimately going to be related to taste in some capacity, even though you're not eating the latter. And I'd say this is especially true after your final meal of the day. This is one of the best ways to stop yourself from continually eating into the night. I think the sensation of having freshly brushed teeth and that kind of minty aftertaste, I would rather keep that as opposed to satisfy my sweet tooth, maybe pick on one or two extra things. The desire for me to keep my mouth clean and fresh supersedes the desire to have more food. Maybe that's just laziness, not wanting to brush my teeth again, but if it works, it works. And when it comes to gum, I think a lot of us, whenever it comes to cravings, even if we're relatively full, there's just something about the sensation of chewing on something, almost like we're dogs. If you can just put a stick of gum in your mouth and chew on that, you're gonna get the same sensation, and the deeper into a cut that you go, the hungrier that you get, I'd say the more gum that you're going to go through. I've been putting a hurting on some gum myself lately, but even in that case, you're still working your jaw muscles. The mewing guys and the jawline guys get that benefit too. They can improve their facial aesthetics. And some extra things when it comes to oral hygiene too. 1, brush your tongue. A lot of you don't realize this. I've seen this in person and it's always gross whenever you realize it, but somebody's tongue is covered in gunk and it's like even green sometimes. If you don't realize that's the main reason that your breath stinks, it's not just brushing your teeth. You need to brush your tongue. You can even use a scraper tool. Also, get the roof of your mouth with your toothbrush. And another big thing too, you need to floss. And I did not floss for a long time. My dentist always would say, make sure you floss. You say, yeah, okay, you never do it. I didn't realize until I started that there is a lot of food particles in between your teeth that you don't realize that you have. And I use these little flosser picks here. I floss once a day after all my meals are finished. So when you think about it like that, it's very easy to pop something in your mouth or take a drink of something. It is not nearly as fast to clean your mouth after the fact. And the final tip here is something I learned the hard way, especially on my last prep. Do not go to the store when you are hungry. And by extension, do not open up Uber Eats and DoorDash and Instacart, any of these food delivery apps. So I remember I would do fasted cardio on my last prep. I would walk to the grocery store because I was like, oh, I get my steps in, fasted cardio, all this good stuff, right? I'd get to the store, get all my normal things. Then, whenever you get close to the registers, they've always got the cookies and the candies and the baked goods and everything. They just throw this stuff in your face. So I would have all my foods, my basket is full, and literally I would stand there for like 30 seconds just staring at an inanimate object, at a box of cookies, going through these conversations in my head like, dude, don't do it.
I don't need it.
But therein lies the problem if you're surrounded by food, especially very sugary, sweet, craving type of foods. Even if rationally you can tell yourself, okay, these are a waste of money, they have basically no nutritional value, I'm only going to enjoy them for a brief second, then I'm going to feel like crap afterwards. All this stuff that in hindsight you're like, why would I ever buy these things? In the heat of the moment, even if your brain can tell you all of that, your hunger signals are going to say, dude, but look how sweet it is. It's going to be delicious. And most people are going to cave in that scenario. I mean, most people, even if they eat all day, they still cave to these signals. So if you are hungry and confronted with these two, it only makes it that much harder. The same thing even applies on the apps. Even if you're at the house and you open up Uber Eats and they've got a buy one, get one free, and it's some place that you don't need to be eating from, it's some junk dish. Oh, but buy one, get one free. And you're hungry, you're like, oh, but I don't want to lose money on this, I had better buy it, and then you order it, and then you devour it in a matter of minutes, and in hindsight, once again, you're like, that was totally pointless, I spent a good amount of money, especially if it's delivery, all those fees they tack on, and you eat these things so quickly, it's like you barely even got to enjoy it, and it was such a fleeting moment. If you have a lot of mental fortitude, you can overcome this, and it does take practice. But I would say, try to not put yourself in that situation as much as you can. Even if you eat something as simple as a couple eggs, or a little bit of chicken, maybe some milk, whatever you're gonna have, just have some level of satiating, high-protein food, nutrient-dense food, before you make that order. Usually what you're gonna do is realize, okay, I don't need to do that. It's kind of like why you hear that you should jerk off before you go on a date. You're less likely to make dumb decisions and overreact if you can relieve yourself before the date, as opposed to being really thirsty and horny and then going on the date. It kind of acts in the same way. And on that topic, that's actually the last thing I did not originally have planned for this video, but it's very true. If your girlfriend or wife is always making a bunch of sweets, as much as you may love them, as much as you may love her, that can get pretty bad, man. And a lot of women will unintentionally or intentionally fatten up their men. And even if you guys don't cook a lot, if you just go out to eat a lot too, your overall relationship may be prompting you to make a lot of bad food decisions. This doesn't even just go for a cut, which is short term. This goes for, in general, long term as well. If you're with somebody that does not take eating that seriously or the gym that seriously, if you're trying to eat healthy and they're always just having the sweets and ordering food, and they want to eat out at all these other places, I mean, you can make that work as much as you can, but realistically, it's probably not going to work out long term. You guys are not going to be seriously compatible. It turns into nothing more than an uphill battle all the time. And given social pressures and things like that, you're going to end up losing a lot of those battles. or at least looking like the bad guy, even if you were just trying to live your life. This applies for men and women both. Food is something that a lot of people take comfort in. It's very tied to their emotions and all this other stuff. So if you're seeing somebody or spending a lot of time with somebody that has an obviously bad relationship with food, you may want to consider getting rid of your relationship with them if you can, or at least keeping a distance, because that is going to end up affecting you as well. There's really no other way around it, as sad as it might be. But this has been it for me, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Be sure to get your program down below. If you want to get in direct contact with me for questions about your own training and eating, the best way to do so is on Patreon. You're also going to get access to our community Discord server there, hundreds of active members every single day, and use my links down below to save money on some great products and services. And I will catch you guys next time.